Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurum-militam yena Tasmai Shri-Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Dindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Krupa Sindhu Bhevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutaya Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna everyone. So welcome to this Nectar of Devotion study. So today we'll do a quick review of chapters 3 and 4 to some degree. So the qualification to advance in Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, it is based on the maturity of two things: our faith and our knowledge of Shastra. So this faith, it means faith in the objective that the only purpose of life is to please Krishna. So we know the line of demarcation between pure devotional service and ordinary devotional service is the desires. So the Kanishtadhikari, the Madhyamadhikari, Uttamadhikari, they have faith that the only objective is to please Krishna. Even though the Kanishtadhikari's faith may be weak or pliable, but they still have faith. And because it is only to please Krishna, by definition then, there are no material desires. And the qualification to enter this realm is one must be free from this bodily conception, meaning any desires to satisfy the body, right? Knowing that the only real pleasure comes from pleasing Krishna. So this is the qualification. And these two characteristics define our qualification to practice devotional service. So someone can go on mute, it's a little bit loud. So the degree of our faith and the degree of our knowledge defines how qualified we are to practice pure devotional service. And we said there are two obstacles in the practice of bhakti. And the two obstacles are bhukti, our material attachments, material desires, and mukti, this desire for impersonal liberation. And of the two, bhukti still allows one to begin the path of devotional service. One can start on the path towards pure devotional service, but one cannot enter the realm of pure bhakti until one becomes free of all material desires. Right? This anyabhilashita shunyam, free of all material desires. And the second obstacle, mukti, is very, very dangerous because one cannot even begin the path of devotional service. When one has a desire to merge into the Brahman, one is denying the personal existence of the Lord. So, when you want to deny the existence of the Lord, then where can be the realm to love Krishna? That is bhakti. Bhakti means to render loving service. Right? So when this desire manifests, it is very dangerous. So there are two obstacles, and these obstacles, they block the taste, the sweet taste of pure devotional service. So we must work to remove these in order to be able to relish this very sweet, sweet taste of pure devotional service. But again, even if one has material desires, one is eligible to start. Right? And we can revisit this anukulyena principle, that our endeavor in devotional service, it is only to please Krishna. And there is a very powerful practical result for us. And that is that every service we do, it should yield pleasure. Because the pleasure is for Krishna, not for us. So when we see that in doing some services, I like this service, but I don't like that service, it's an indication, a symptom, that our mood is not yet fully purified. That I'm doing this service for my own enjoyment, but not for Krishna's pleasure. So as we purify our intent of service, our intent for why I'm doing that service, it is for Krishna's pleasure, then one very profound and powerful experience manifests. And that is that we find equal pleasure in all services. There's a great enjoyment because my only goal is to please Krishna. So it's a very nice practical way for us to evaluate how pure is my intent in service. I can measure that by how steady is my happiness in service, regardless of what the service is. Because if my goal is only to please Krishna, then whatever I do in service should have equal experience. So it's a practical way for us to review. So now we'll discuss chapter 5. The title of chapter 5 is very powerful. Srila Prabhupada has called it the purity of devotional service. And it means that bhakti is so pure that it is independent of any material consideration. It doesn't depend on anything else. We say bhakti has no cause. It means it is not dependent on anything else. I have a cause. My body was caused by some prior action and by the manifestation through mother and father. A plant grows from the ground. There is a cause for that. There was a seed that was planted. There is sunlight and rain that comes to create the existence of that plant. But bhakti, devotional service, is independent of anything else. It has no external consideration. And that's what makes it very, very powerful. Okay? So it is transcendental, or it is independent of the color of our skin, our wealth, our intelligence, where we were born, time, place, anything. It has no external consideration because it is so pure and so powerful. So we'll discuss a little bit more about that. So there are three processes Srila Prabhupada speaks about towards the end of this chapter of spiritual realization. And these processes, they are dependent on other external circumstances. But bhakti is not. So we see in Karma Kanda, it is dependent on this time, place, circumstance, the facilities. Very specific things must be done in order to perform such process. In jnana process, it requires great intellect, a very peaceful disposition, a mood. But bhakti can be done anytime, any place, anywhere. As Chaitanya Mahaprabhu describes, there are no hard and fast rules in chanting of the holy names. So the other processes, they have some external dependencies. But bhakti is so pure, so powerful, that it is independent. It has no material consideration. And when one enters the realm of bhakti, it is all-encompassing. Right? There's no duty or karma. There's no duty, in karma or jnana if we're doing bhakti. It's all-encompassing. It brings the benefits of all other paths. So this is the purity of devotional service. So now, in the chapter, Srila Rupa Goswami is explaining that it is independent of three things. It's so powerful that it is independent of three things. It is independent of birth, it is independent of how pure we are, and it is independent of our execution of varnashram duties. So we'll take each one in detail. But at the end of the first paragraph on page 47, Srila Prabhupada writes, as stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, devotional service is transcendental and has no cause. Devotional service is executed without any hope for gain, and it cannot be checked by any material circumstance. It is open for all, without any distinction, and it is the constitutional occupation of the living entities. So we see it cannot be checked by anything. So first is independent of birth. And there's a very scientific reason for this. Why, if I'm born in one family and someone is born in another family, me and that other person both have a right and an opportunity to perform devotional service? Well, we know it is the constitutional position, meaning it is the eternal situation, the intrinsic quality of every living entity to be a servant of Krishna. And every jiva is part and parcel of Krishna. And so Krishna is our eternal father. So with some very basic logic, no father says, one son can love me, but another child cannot. I have 10 children, I'll accept love from 6 of them, but not from the other 4. No loving father would ever put forth such logic. So Krishna accepts love, bhakti, from every single one of his children, independent of what external covering they may have. Because what is our birth based on? I may have this color body or another color body. It is based on my past karma. It has nothing to do with the constitutional position of my soul. So regardless if I am in a white body, black body, green body, or blue body, it doesn't matter. I'm still part and parcel of Krishna, and I have an eternal constitutional position to be servant of Krishna. So this seems very logical and very basic. Surely no father would deny the love of any of his children. Why Krishna would deny the love of any of his children? But as we study and we see the history in India and in all parts of the world, but within India, there's caste Goswamis who claimed to be descendants of Lord Nityananda's family, who claimed to be. These Nityananda Vamshas, they claimed a monopoly on spirituality. They said that only we can become Brahmins and wear the Brahmin thread and perform these various worships. But they were protecting their monopoly. They were saying that you must come to us if you want to perform some purificatory process, if you wanted to perform some spiritual rite. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur fought vehemently, following in the footsteps of his father, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, to smash this idea that only those born in a certain family may practice spiritual life. And he established the supremacy of Vaishnavism, that a Vaishnava is even higher than a Brahmana. And this was not an easy process. It was very contentious. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, his life was threatened twice. They tried to kill him. They bribed a police officer to look the other way when they were ready to murder Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur. Once his party was attacked during Navadvip Mandal Parikrama. So this very bold position Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur took to take from Shastra that bhakti is independent of birth. It was not widely accepted. And still today there is some discrimination that takes place, where temples may not allow people born of certain birth. But again, Srila Rupa Goswami is establishing here very clearly that bhakti is independent of birth. It is so powerful. We sometimes take the right to do pure devotional service for granted. But were it not for Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's great struggles, and Srila Prabhupada's extraordinary endeavor to prove it by bringing it to the whole world and creating truly a united nations, we would not have this opportunity. So the main point here is that coming to devotional service, becoming a Vaishnava, a servant of Krishna, it is the highest platform one can achieve. And it is independent of our birth. It is higher than even a Brahmana. And this is what Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur established. He gave this Brahmin initiation, this Brahmin thread, based on qualification, not based on birth. And at this very famous Balagai Junction convention, in a 3-day debate, he very firmly established the supremacy of the Vaishnava. So, anyways, much can be said about this, but we'll move on. Next, bhakti is independent of the level of our purity. It doesn't matter how impure we may be, that it is available to us. In bhakti, it's like the sun. When the sun is present, all darkness is dissipated. Similarly, bhakti is so powerful that all the impurities in the heart, when bhakti is properly executed, will be dissipated. Just as the sun dissipates darkness, bhakti can remove all of our impurities. And there is no other process that can remove the impurities but devotional service. Just like you cannot remove darkness with a broom. It won't work. But the impurities of the heart, they are there. But they can be removed by the potency of devotional service. Right? So it does not matter how impure we are. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said he was Patitana Pavana. He was the deliverer of the most fallen. And that's why he delivered those like Jagai and Madai. Lord Nityananda went to preach to them to show that bhakti is so powerful. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message is so powerful that even Jagai and Madai could be delivered. And to show the supremacy of bhakti, he went to deliver even them. So it is only bhakti that will clean the heart. We can't clean the heart with any other process. And what's interesting is, if we needed a pure heart to start bhakti, but bhakti is the only way to clean the heart, then how we would have ever started? There's no other way to clean the heart. So if purity was required to start, we would have no hope, no choice. So very logically and based on Shastra, devotional service bhakti does not require purity to start. Instead, It is bhakti itself that purifies the impure heart. And this is the most comforting statement we can find. No matter where we are, we can be there. We can do devotional service. And we all sometimes wonder how I'll remove my envy or my greed or my lust or this or that. It is by bhakti. That is the purifying process. Remember, bhakti is the only thing that can remove that bijam and kutam that create the cycle of sin. Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport that even a mistake, one should remain in bhakti. There is no need for these prayaschitta, purificatory processes. In the Vedas, there are many, many purificatory processes provided. But the real atonement, as we studied in Nectar of Instruction, is devotional service. Otherwise, it is that elephant bath where we keep sinning and atoning, sinning and atoning, sinning and atoning. So, this when a mistake happens, it is only through devotional service that can purify. But we must be very mindful not to take advantage of that, to commit sinful activities and the strength of chanting the holy names of the Lord. One of the most dangerous offenses. So dangerous because one cannot be relieved of that offense. Bhakti cannot purify that nama aparad. So while bhakti is very powerful and very purifying, we should be very careful not to commit sinful activities thinking, oh, I have bhakti in my hip pocket, to purify of that. Intentional mistakes will not be forgiven. And finally, bhakti is independent of the execution of our varnashram dharma. So in this varnashram dharma, we have 4 varnas and 4 ashrams. We have the brahmacharya ashram, the grihastha ashram, vanaprastha ashram, and sannyas ashram. And we have the 4 varnas, right? The shudras, vaishyas, kshatriyas, and brahmanas. And the whole purpose of this varnashram dharma system is to create a very nice environment in society where everyone can very peacefully coexist, so that one may take to the higher purpose of spiritual life. But devotional service, bhakti, is not dependent on executing these prescribed duties within varnashram dharma. And Srila Rupa Goswami gives great scriptural evidence because there's some confusion about this. If I'm doing devotional service, do I have to perform these other sacrifices, these other rituals, these other rites? And again, Srila Rupa Goswami establishing that bhakti is independent of those. I'll just read a few of them that are presented here. From Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st Canto, 5th chapter, verse 17, wherein Sri Narada Muni advises Vyasadeva thus, quote, even if one does not execute his specific occupational duty, but immediately takes direct shelter of the lotus feet of Hare Krishna, there will be no fault on his part, and in all circumstances his position is secure. Even if by some bad association he falls down while executing devotional service, or if he doesn't finish the complete course of devotional service and dies untimely, still he is not at loss. A person who is simply discharging his occupational duties in varna and ashram, however, with no Krishna consciousness, practically does not gain the true benefit of human life. A very important verse here. Again in 5th canto, Rishabdev speaking to his sons. Persons engaged in fruitive activities are repeatedly accepting birth and death, and until they develop a loving feeling for Vasudeva, there will be no question of getting out from these stringent laws of nature. So again, until there is bhakti, there is no hope to get out. In the 11th canto, 5th chapter, 41st verse, this is in the Karabhajan Muni is speaking to Maharaj Nimi. My dear king, if someone gives up his occupational duties as they are prescribed for the different varnas and ashrams, but takes complete shelter, surrendering himself unto the lotus feet of the Lord, such a person is no more a debtor, nor he has any obligations to perform the different kinds of activities we render to the great sages, ancestors, living entities, and family and society members. Nor he has any need to bother executing the 5 kinds of yagnas for becoming free from sinful contamination. Simply by discharging devotional service, he is free from all kinds of obligations. So again, the point here is that we don't need to perfect all these different varnashram duties to start devotional service. And devotional service supersedes all of these. Varnashram dharma is meant to elevate our consciousness. But by perfecting our varnashram duties and not coming to devotional life, we have not achieved the ultimate purpose. So even if we perfect those duties, if there is no Krishna consciousness, then one doesn't gain the real benefit of human life. And sometimes we wonder about these various duties, these Shraddha ceremonies and Pinda ceremonies and different debts we owe. We certainly owe great debts to our ancestors, forefathers, demigods. But very clearly on the basis of Shastra, we see that all such debts are paid off by the practice of devotional service. This final one I'll read from the Agastya Samhita. As the regular principles of scriptures are not required by a liberated person, so the ritualistic principles indicated in the Vedic supplements are also not required for a person duly engaged in the service of Lord Ramachandra. So again, I read quite a few verses here, but to emphasize the point that Srila Rupa Goswami is giving us faith that bhakti, so powerful, nothing else is required. So we can satisfy all of our debts, and we do not need to perfect our varnashram dharma system. Now, again, the varnashram system is very important for the establishment of an environment in society in which devotional service can propagate very heavily. But we must take to the process of bhakti to ultimately yield the benefit of this varnashram dharma. Okay? So, this very important piece. And then Srila Prabhupada makes the nice comment about the potency of Guru, speaking about the independence, that a Guru is powerful, can make anyone a Vaishnava. And he gives the example of bell metal. A bell metal can be turned into gold by the addition of mercury. So a Guru can take the most impure person of any birth, of following any varnashram system, and by engaging them in devotional service, can turn them into a pure devotee. So this is the potency of Guru. So the summary of this is that bhakti is so pure that it is independent of everything else. There's no prerequisite to elevate someone. We don't need to be rich, or don't need to be in a certain class, or have a certain amount of knowledge, or a certain body type. Other processes of purification, this karma kanda, this jnana, they require so many external considerations. But bhakti is so pure and powerful, it is independent of all of these. No material impediment can be in our way. It means we have no excuse. Sometimes we hear people say, oh, I can't come to the temple, I'm too fallen. I can't chant, I'm too impure. Now we have knowledge to explain to them. Bhakti is independent. There is no such thing as I am not qualified. Srila Prabhupada and Rupa Goswami comments in chapter 5 about a very important point. That this initiation, Rupa Goswami warns us that initiation is the beginning of the process. It is the beginning of the road on devotional service, not the end. You know, cannot think that now I don't need to follow the rules and regulations once we're initiated. This is the beginning of the process. And Brahman initiation brings one to commit one's life to rendering service to Krishna. Because if we stop following them, even though one may be initiated, one will fall down. So sometimes there's a tendency when we become initiated, oh, now I've arrived, now I can relax. We work very, very hard up to that point. But then, once initiation begins, now I'm done. The Rupa Goswami is guiding us very importantly. It is the beginning of the process. The beginning, not the end. Okay, so now we'll move into chapter 6. Chapter 6 is the discharge of devotional service. So the next 8 or 9 chapters will take a brief break from some heavy philosophy and speak about the principles of practicing Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. So there are 64 angas that show us exactly how to perform Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. We perform Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti to purify the heart so that we may awaken this Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. And then Bhava Bhakti and Prema Bhakti. So how to do that? What are the regulative processes to follow? We know Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti is performing devotional service under the guidance of Guru and Shastra. So what are the exact principles to do? That is being shown here. At the end of this chapter, Srila Prabhupada says, the 64 items of devotional service should include all of our activities of body, mind, and speech. As stated in the beginning, the regular principle of devotional service enjoins that all of our senses must be employed in the service of the Lord. Exactly how they can be employed is described in the above 64 items. Exactly how to be employed is now being discussed. How to practice bhakti is not left to our mental speculation. They are prescribed in Shastra. So these are very practical procedures for us to follow. And we can make a checklist. We can put all of these angas into a spreadsheet and just track how many of these am I doing daily. It is a very practical list that we can kind of evaluate. How many? Am I applying tilak on the body? Have I circumambulated the Lord? Have I chanted the japa? Offered water to Tulsi? So many of these angas we see. Right? So this is the, and what is the overarching principle? We discussed this way back in the earlier chapter. That the essence of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti is to always remember Krishna and never forget him. So these 64 angas are meant to bring us to remember Krishna and never forget him. So when we're applying tilak on the body, it is meant to remind us that this is a temple of the Lord. When we're circumambulating Tulsi Marani, it is meant to help us remember her great devotion to Krishna. Like that, every anga is meant to help us remember Krishna and never forget him. So when we practice these angas, we should keep this as the essential principle and not forget them. And finally, where do these angas come from? Are they just someone's speculation? No. They come from Sanatana Goswami's Hari Bhakti Vilas. And what is Sanatana Goswami's qualification to give these angas? Well, we know he was instructed personally by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for 1 month. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came for one purpose, to teach us how to perform devotional service. He spoke, and Krishna, that you surrender everything to me, abandon everything and just surrender to me. But in the mood, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna comes and shows us exactly what to do. So he told Sanatana Goswami these principles of exactly how to perform devotional service, and now Srila Rupa Goswami is presenting them to us. So they are coming directly from Krishna through parampara. That is the potency of these angas. And the goal of all of these angas is ultimately to bring us to Krishna. Now, Rupa Goswami is giving us the principles here, the principles that we should follow. The details of exactly how to do that, that is explained by Guru. So the principles are given here, and the details are given by Guru. The overall activity is here, exactly how to implement, how to do, that comes from the spiritual master. So now we'll just briefly discuss the structure of the 64 angas. So the first 10 and the second 10, these are the very important angas to follow. The first 10 are the preliminary principles for beginning Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. Srila Prabhupada writes, these 10 are the preliminary necessities for beginning the discharge of devotional service. So I just wanted to read the first 10, given their great importance. I'll just read the paragraph. He mentions the basic principles as follows. 1. Accepting the shelter of the lotus feet of a bona fide spiritual master. 2. Becoming initiated by the spiritual master and learning how to discharge devotional service from him. 3. Obeying the orders of the spiritual master with faith and devotion. 4. Following in the footsteps of great acharyas, teachers, under the direction of the spiritual master. 5. Inquiring from the spiritual master how to advance in Krishna consciousness. 6. Being prepared to give up anything material for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. 7. Residing in a sacred place of pilgrimage like Dwarka or Vrindavan. 8. Accepting only what is necessary, or dealing with the material world only as far as necessary. 9. Observing the fasting day on Ekadashi. And 10. Worshipping the sacred tree like the banyan tree. So, to make rapid progress, one is advised to follow these 10 principal angas of devotional service. These are their preliminary principles. The next 10 are the secondary principles, and they are the things to avoid. So we have pravritti and nivritti, the things to do and the things to avoid. So the next 10 are instructions of what one should not do. And so these 10 combine to create the primary principles, the first 20. The next 44 are additional topics to follow. And then we'll see later that there are 5 most potent angas of devotional service. Okay? So Srila Prabhupada points out, though, of the first 20, the 3 most important. The 3 most important are accepting the shelter of a bona fide guru, taking initiation, and serving with respect and reverence. We actually see in the first 5, they all introduce the importance of Guru. Because it is Guru who then can bring us to engage us in the other angas of devotional service. So Srila Rupa Goswami, in this long list, is presenting these very important first steps. And Srila Prabhupada says they are the most important. Accepting the shelter of a guru, taking initiation, and following the instructions of this guru by rendering service. So this very important process is explained to us. And the remaining chapters in this section now will give scriptural evidences to each of these angas. So not just giving us do this, but now where in Shastra it says one should accept a guru? Where in Shastra it says one should take initiation? Why does someone have to take initiation? Why can't I just chant the holy names and render service? So where in Shastra is it given? So Srila Rupa Goswami is now going to present in the coming chapters the specific scriptural evidences to support these angas, to make it very strong in our heart and give us faith in practicing these, so that By practicing these angas of devotional service, we can make rapid progress towards Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, Bhava Bhakti, and ultimately Prema Bhakti. We can see how merciful Rupa Goswami is. He's giving us, he started this whole thing by defining pure bhakti. Then spoke about the great characteristics that come in pure bhakti. He assured us, you only need attraction to start. He shines a light on the obstacles in bhakti. He explains faith and knowledge is going to increase our qualification. And now he is presenting exactly what to do. And then he's going to now explain in the coming weeks why these angas specifically are so important. Such a complete instruction is given here by Rupa Goswami of how to practice devotional service. And that is why Srila Prabhupada gave this Nectar devotion the subtitle, The Complete Science of Bhakti Yoga. So I look forward to discussing these angas with everyone in the next couple of weeks. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions or comments.
Hare Krishna, very nice. Could you just come to the first slide? That first part, actually, I missed out. The first slide.
The review? This slide?
No, this was the overview, right?
Yeah, this slide?
Something is, it was... Yeah, this is the one. Bhakti is so clear. I just wanted to write down the first sentence.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. Any other questions or comments? Okay. If there's nothing to discuss today, so next week we'll begin discussing the details of each of these angas and the scriptural evidences behind them. So, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki